Hello, and welcome
Hello.
to this week's Friday Night Chat Show. And we have a very special guest for this today, and that is Mr. Murray Bailey. I was going to say Barry Maley then, I nearly got that backwards.
That takes
How's
me
it
back
going?
to my childhood. People used to call me that.
How's it going?
Yes, going very well, thank you. Apart from the lack
Excellent.
of sleep because of the 3-year-old.
Oh, I know the feeling. My little girl's 4 and she's still going through this. Occasionally she'll sleep all night and give you that faith that it's going to be okay. And then the next couple of days and just sleep deprivation is the
Yeah.
worst thing that there is.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Is Chris still with us? Is Chris Hooley around?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm just enjoying the
Okay.
conversation between you guys.
Yeah. Well, we all know the same.
Child problems.
Yeah. Amazing.
Oh,
So, have you
I was going to
been?
mention a child problem that.
Go on.
No, sorry. I was going to mention a child problem that I had with my son yesterday, but I can't mention it in the show, and it's too traumatic for me to even mention again.
Oh, you can't leave it there.
It involved the bath and things that you should not do in a bath. Yeah.
You need something handy to scoop it out with.
Yeah, definitely.
It was
not
sick last week, and now this week, Chris.
Yeah, and it was the first time it's ever happened to me as well. So I was absolutely like, "What do I do?"
My wife just shouts out, Murray, bath, I know, okay.
That's fantastic. Murray, so you've got a lot of books that have been released over the last, well, I'm going to say a few years. It's probably more than a couple of years.
Yeah, 2016 was the first one.
Oh, so it's not a massive amount of time for the amount of books you've released then. Can I just ask, there's a lot of connection with Singapore in your titles, and obviously within the work. And what is that connection there, and why is it there?
Primarily because that's one series which is all based in Singapore, and it was inspired by my father, who was a military policeman in Singapore back in the 1950s. So it's loosely based on, it's based on his experiences. The first one, Singapore 52, was very much inspired by him. We went for a couple of visits, walked the streets. He told me the stories, and there are elements within my plot that hark back to his experiences. And I really enjoyed doing that. And I always intended it to be a trilogy, but very rapidly realized there were probably going to be 6 in the series. And having written the 6th, I can't tell you what happens at the end of the 6th, but there's now going to be a prequel, and there's bound to be something that happens afterwards. So, it won't be called Singapore because it's no longer as relevant, but it will carry on.
Worldwide, it's going worldwide.
Probably. Well,
So,
I give you the prequel's in Cyprus, and what happens afterwards will probably be Hong Kong.
Wow.
And it'll make sense when you read the books.
Did you travel to Singapore yourself?
Yeah, so let's say I took my father there for his 75th birthday. Spent 10 days, spent an absolute fortune wining and dining him, trying to get him to tell me his stories. Some of which were slightly dodgy, some of which my mother heard and then refused to talk to him for a while. So did lots of research, and it was fascinating to see Singapore through somebody's eyes who saw it in the 1950s as opposed to what it's now. It's totally different.
I bet it is, yeah. So as an author, that's a great sort of thing to be able to do, to really feel that culture and take it in, that you can reflect in your work then.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the feedback I've had, certainly from 52, when people read that, they sense that they're there. And it's not just about what you see; it's about what you smell and you taste. And it was just great, feeling that with my dad when I was going around. So I think that very much comes across in the book.
I bet he's got some wicked stories then.
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine those sort of places. For me, I don't think I'd really like to visit so much, just because of how insane or intense the culture is. But I guess back in those days as well, it was probably a whole different story.
Yeah, very, very different. British colonialism, still very heavily populated. It was a lot of slums. In fact, in my last book, the Singapore Fire, which is out next year, there's a lot of focus on that. What the real people, how they were suffering, and the conditions they were living in. but yeah, very atmospheric, very different culture. People just, you just jump in a trishaw. There were actually buses, cable car buses as well, but the streets were not as packed as they are today. Totally different, and just a lovely atmosphere walking down the quays. It's you get restaurants there now. Previously, it was just a hive of activity. With stuff coming out of the go downs, going onto the bumboats, and the smells were incredible as well. So now you smell food cooking, whereas it was a mixture of rubber, because it was a lot of rubber export from there. So bales of rubber, but also lots of spices, and you said cinnamon, smell of tobacco. Of course, that's the other thing that we've got used to today, is that people just very rarely smoke, and it's in crowded offices. Whereas when everybody goes into an office, it's full of smoke and it's not air conditioned, and hardly anybody has a telephone and all that sort of stuff.
So crazy.
So Murray, with Ash Carter, you've drawn a lot of comparisons, or people, or your readers draw a lot of comparisons with people like Jack Reacher and James Bond. How did he come about in your mind? What did you want to achieve when you were writing Jack Carter? Jack Carter, I've just mixed the two names. Ash Carter.
I started. I wrote the first version. It was called something. It was called The Gin Deception, and I won a competition with it, and HarperCollins were very keen, and then they wrote a review that made me rethink it. So I did that more than 10 years ago, and then I subsequently went back to Singapore and I changed my character. So the similarity with Jack Reacher is just because it's a military policeman, ex-military policeman. He has a base though, and so he's based in Singapore. He's not a nomad. And he's also, people pick up on the fact that he's been to Cambridge University. He's very well educated. Jack Reacher worked his way up through the ranks. This guy came in as a commissioned officer, and very much working with the, as you'll find out in the prequel, the Cyprus book, very much working with military intelligence. Involved with what was going on in the early years of the formation of Israel and the strife with Palestine, but so that's where the similarity ends. It's a military policeman, ex-military policeman, in a similar way. He's tough, he's a boxer, but he's not a thug. I love Lee Child's early books, but he can be a bit of a vigilante and a bit of a thug at times, and I don't like that. I'm far too polite, and I ended up finding that the character became much more like me on the rewriting of it, and I found it easier. It wasn't first person the first time. I wrote it as first person when I rewrote it as Singapore 52, and it very much became me, and it was a lot easier to have a character that thinks a bit very similar to myself, although with the experiences of my father. So in terms of James Bond, I think the similarities are with the early stuff, Fleming's own books as opposed to the films. He's a proper guy. He speaks properly, very politely. He's a gentleman, but he can box, and he's an amateur boxer, and he's certainly handle himself in a fight, and you'll find he gets into quite a lot of fights. And he's a risk taker as well. So, people also liken it to sort of Jason Bourne. They're all sort of these single protagonists who are pretty tough guys. But his difference is he's vulnerable. So you'll find in a few of the stories he damn well gets hurt, and both physically and emotionally. And in fact, the last one is quite an emotional story because it sort of wraps it all up with the relationship he had in the first one. Based on a young lady that my father told me about. I can't go into more detail, apart from I've elaborated and made her part of the Chinese secret society, equivalent to a triad in Singapore, whereas the reality wasn't. She was in a typing pool. But it's very much about his relationship with her, and within all my books, never assume you know what's going to happen, because it won't.
Yeah. There's obviously a massive influence from your father in the stories, But where did your inspiration to begin writing with? I guess more as a career.
Yeah.
Or, where was that from?
I've been writing since I was a kid. Actually, I used to write. My first stuff was science fiction.
Okay.
I was very much into Asimov as a teenager, and tried to write. I wrote a lot of short stories that were absolutely rubbish. Never did anything with them. I just enjoyed writing. I've always been one that had sort of these stories in my head and needed to write them down. And then I didn't do it. I got on with my career basically in my professional career for many years, and just tinkered with writing. And then I switched to trying to write comedy, sort of a bit of a Terry Pratchett type influence, I suppose, which was more aimed at children. I've still got it. It was pretty rubbish. And then I really didn't get going again until it must have been about 10 years ago when I wrote this Singapore book, the first Singapore book, what I called Gin Deception. And that was very much, say, influenced by my father. But prior to that, just thinking I wanted to write, I had more time. Actually, it was more than 10 years because it was 2008. My professional career was very much involved with the financial services. That collapsed, as you know, in 2008. And I suddenly had a lot of time on my hand. I was going through a sticky patch with she was then my ex-wife. So I was on my own, had a bit of time, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to have another go at writing this. I just spent a couple of hours a day. I used to get up really early in the morning, do my writing, get it out of my system, and then get on with work.
How much has that writing process changed from the first, obviously, couple of times you were writing back then to now? Is it a massive difference?
Yeah. In fact, the first book that was published wasn't, because I'd shelved my Singapore books. I'd written the trilogy I'd planned to write, and they were rubbish. And then I went on a few writing courses. So I knew I had these stories, but I just didn't know how to write them. And I went on a few writing courses, and I recommend that to everybody, just to get it in your head how you should be telling the story.
Yeah.
And that gave me much more of a better structure to think about. And then I thought, well, hold on a minute. Who do I admire the most? And I also recommend this. Take the book you admire the most. And for me, it was Harlan Coben. His, I can't remember the title, which is brilliant. I admire him, but I can't.
There's so many.
The Woods is on Netflix. So I'd recommend that, certainly. Tell No One was the one I was particularly keen on at the time. And I read that and just thought, hold on a minute. He is following this loose structure. I can see how he's almost, he teases the reader. So he has his overarching plot, and there are these teases, and it builds and builds and builds. And I combined that with the idea of Lee Child's, which I always think when you start reading his early stuff, you don't know how it's going to end. You don't really know what the plot is. So it's not a whodunit. It's what the hell's going on it. And I like that. So I then wrote a book called I Dare You. I've just noticed there's another one came out this year called I Dare You, but it was the first I Dare You. And my writing style for that was I totally plotted it. I'm a very logical person. And I wrote chapter by chapter what's going to happen, and I had to move things around because there's flashbacks, because it goes off to Iraq, and there's a second storyline. As the main story is this young lady trying to find whether her boyfriend was telling the truth or not. He claimed he was in the special forces, and is in hiding, and he disappears. And after a while, she starts getting messages that imply actually he wasn't telling lies, it was true, and she tries to track him down.
Okay. I
won't tell you anymore because it's not quite as straightforward as that. And so I totally plotted it, and it really took all the pleasure out of writing. And I found, in fact, when I put it aside, I got some good friends to read it, and you know how it is. You got good friends who say, "Yeah, that's brilliant," no matter what. You've written it; they're amazed that you wrote it. And then
but you don't believe them.
Said, "Read it to yourself. Put it aside, then pick it up again and read it to yourself out loud." And I did that. And I thought, you know what, it's a bit stilted. You know, the very fact that as I was writing some of those chapters, I thought, I've got to say this. And it became a bit dull for me, and I think it read a bit dull as well. And I also, and this is why, you know, one of the readers' feedback is it's the best thriller they've ever written and they've ever read. And you know, although I know, you know, that's 1 in a million, but there's a real trick in it, because when I'd written it the first time and when I reread it to myself, I thought, this isn't over. So it's like a double ending. There's a you think it's over, but it's not. And that experience made me realize that when I start writing a book, I don't know everything. I can't predict everything. So now I've got my idea of the overarching plot. I know what's going to happen as key events throughout. I work on my characters. But even then, I find as I'm working through, you know, I might think, oh, this character is slightly different. I could work on that, and I go back and I change elements of the character. So I no longer think I can totally plan it all, which I thought I could. And you know what? It's much more pleasurable writing that way.
Yeah.
And the most pleasure I've had, I think, was when I did Singapore Killer, and I got to 3/4 of the way, and I thought, oh, this is becoming a little bit tired. You know, I'm not really excited about the next chapter, even though it was getting to an exciting part. So I wrote the last chapter, and then I wrote the penultimate chapter, and I worked back, and it was just fabulous. I just loved the way it built up. And I was excited to then say, oh, that's what happens next, and that's what happens next. So I really did that, and I've taken that now as, when I write, you know, this is purely, you know, the reason I write is I do it for myself, and I want other people to enjoy what I write. And, you know, there's no point in planning it all and not enjoying the writing. And if I get up one morning and I don't feel I'm in the right place, because, you know, I don't force myself to write. I used to be really disciplined and say, right, 2 hours, this is it. I'm going to write at least 1,500 words. But not anymore. I quite happily take a week off. In fact, I took 3 weeks off at one point, just to get my head clear. Too many stories buzzing around in my head, too confused, and then sort of settled it all down again.
I agree with that completely. In terms of, you put too much pressure on yourself, or you put too much of a commitment into writing something just for the sake of writing, as opposed to creating. It gets to a point where it almost, you give yourself a guess writer's block. And I did that last year with NaMoWriMo, that sort of competition during November. Yeah. And because I was religiously sitting down every day saying, I've got to write this, got to write that, I did exactly the same thing and just lost the fun. So I just basically didn't finish it, and I gave myself a couple of weeks off, like you said, and just went back to something I enjoyed doing. So, yes.
I've got another trick, by the way. I don't really suffer from writer's block. I've got 3 books on the go, at least. Wow. Which is a bit of a problem, because I keep telling my wife I'm going to take a rest, and then she says, what are you doing now? Well, I'm writing that one I said I was. So for example, I'm currently editing Singapore. There's a tiny tweak I need to finish off with Singapore Fire. It's come back from the editor. I've made a change. It's come back, and I need to make another change. So, you know, that it's really finished, but I know I'm not 100% happy with it. I'm writing a standalone murder mystery at the moment, and that is pretty much finished, but I'm going over it, and I'm in the editing stage before it gets off to the editor. I've written 20% of a book that's called Code of the Dead. I don't know if you've noticed, Map of the Dead was my first Egyptian-based thriller. It's very much like a Wilbur Smith, River God type flashbacks to it, but it's sort of a Dan Brown mystery wrapped around it. And the third one, I know the plot, and I've written all the historical stuff. I just now need to write the rest, so that's just sitting there. And the Cyprus story, I hadn't intended to write it. I just suddenly started. I thought, well, you know, lockdown. I've done my writing of this mystery, this murder mystery for the day. I've got 2 more hours. What can I do? Oh, I know. I'll write this other story. So so that's about 20% done as well. So I've got all these stories on the go at the same time, plus a whole load. I've got a work in in progress file, and there's lots of other ideas that I can keep dipping into and adding a bit of maybe the plot was this or maybe there's that. So yeah, it's too exciting.
Yeah.
Sounds fantastic. So there's a few staple questions that we ask on the show.
Okay.
And so I'll ask the first one. If you could change the ending to any book, which book would it be and why?
Of my books?
No, not your books. Any book. Well, it can be one of yours if you're really unsatisfied with it. But
well, I did just say I changed the ending to I Dare You because I made it a double ending. I don't know about a book. Nothing jumps. You should have briefed me and let me think about it. But,
everyone says that.
I think there was a TV series recently called Apple Tree Yard. You remember that?
That is a book. It's based on a book.
A young lady had an affair with somebody in a street called Apple Tree Yard. And at the end, I'm ruining it if anybody wants to watch this, but in the end, he is in remand and she's talking to him. And there was a huge opportunity for a twist in that, and there wasn't a twist. It was like, what? You've missed it. You've missed the opportunity. So I wouldn't want to say too much about it because it will ruin it for anybody else. But it was brilliant. I thought the whole thing was really, really good, except for they missed the opportunity of a twist, and then it would have been wow.
Yeah.
I think in terms of my stories, I've got better at that. Certainly, the last. Certainly, Singapore Killer, people are sort of saying, wow, I just didn't expect those last couple of chapters. The Singapore Fire, hopefully people are going to fall off the chairs when they read it. And the murder mysteries are great because you really want to surprise the reader at the end. So they think everything's tied up and then actually you're wrong. So I know I've got better at that, and I think it gives me a lot of pleasure, and particularly when my wife picks up one of my books, and I have to confess, it's only happened twice where she's got to the end and said, "Oh my God, that's given me goosebumps," or "Oh, I didn't expect that." And that's happened with the last two, so I'm hopeful with this standalone murder mystery.
We have often done the crossover there.
Sorry, Chris.
Sorry, I was going to say you've done the crossover there between books and TV.
Yeah.
Have any of your books been optioned for TV yet? Or
no,
how do you feel about that?
And I missed an opportunity. Well, I maybe not missed an opportunity because a reporter at Sky News picked up Singapore 52, and it was somebody I knew, and I wanted him to introduce me to Tom Bradbury, who he had a link with because he used to be at ITN, but he didn't. Instead, he read the book, and he came back and said, "This is perfect as an on-screen thriller. You need to, write it as a screenplay and get it to," I think he said Channel 5. I can't remember if it was Channel 5 or Channel 4. And I haven't done that because I haven't got time. I'm too busy writing my next story. It's very hard to go back and change one of the novels into a screenplay.
Well, we do have on our website, Murray, if you go onto there on the author's services page, you can submit an idea of a screenplay onto our page, and we have producers that look at that.
Okay.
So you never know. That might be worth doing.
Yeah. But I say a lot of people that read it because I think it's so atmospheric.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw it. There was I think it might be Channel 4 or 5. I had a series called The Last Call, based on the military police leaving Aden. And some people saw that and said, "Oh my God, this is a similar sort of thing, but without the excitement that you've got in your Singapore 52." And whichever channel it was, I need to find out where it was. Love that sort of historical thriller with because of all the atmosphere in it.
Yeah. Sorry, Chris, I got to ask the other question that you said I've started the first half to there. Murray, if you could adapt any character, whether it's in fiction, in literature or TV or film, any character at all, and take it and create your own version of that character, who would you choose?
Gets the same reaction every time.
Yeah. I think because I love Lee Child's writing, I think with Jack Reacher, I would make him more like Ash Carter.
Yeah.
I just don't. I hate the thuggishness sign of it, the gorilla that is sometimes described as. How does he get all these gorgeous women when he's such a gorilla? I don't know.
Yeah.
And the gratuitous violence. I mean, and there was one recently, I had to stop reading it, where there was the head got chopped off and put in the lift. Really? I know. So yeah, I know. I think that overall, most of the plots, the early stuff, were very, very cleverly written. I just like his character to be a little less. I mean, there's some things like the way he does maths in his head to a ridiculous level of skill. The way he's the best marksman that there's ever been. The way he can tell the time, even if he's in a different time zone, he knows what the time is to the second. I think that's all a little bit over the top. I like people to be real, and I've tried to make my characters very real. And that's why I found by making Ash Carter think like me, I found it was easy to make him real. And then I've used that in subsequent books with different characters to make them real. And one of my characters, sorry to sort of go off on a tangent, but you'll see some of the reviews of Singapore Killer, and she continues in Singapore Fire, is a lady called Madam Chow. And I think she's the best character I've ever created. She's just so real. She's a grumpy old sourpuss that's lovable.
So you
go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, you tempted to take Madam Chow and give her own book, perhaps?
You'll have to read the books. I'm not tempted with Madam Chow, but I am tempted with somebody else, very much so. And you'll have to wait for what happens. So the end of Singapore Killer, and I'm not going to say too much, but there is a character in that you will know. Something else has to happen, and that character will get their own book, because it's very much alive in my head. And Hong Kong, I've got a fantastic book on Hong Kong. I've got a very close friend that used to live in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong in the 1950s, this is, so that character will definitely go on. Madam Chow, I think she may well appear at some point in the future if he ever goes back to Singapore, but no, she stays in Singapore. And he's moved on.
So with you thinking, obviously, you're doing a prequel to the Ash Carter stuff, going to Greece. Like, I suppose the options are endless with any of your characters that you've done, especially if you wanted to go and look at their history before they arrive in the Singapore series.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So is that something that you would consider, maybe?
Again, it will only be Ash Carter. I've got too many other books to write, Chris. I've got these Egyptian books. I've got a third one in the series that I Dare You. That I've got the plot for. I just need the time to write. And I think in this standalone book, I've got a detective called Julia Plantes, and she's definitely due her own books. I've sort of fallen in love with her, actually. She was just supposed to be a minor character in the background with the detective finding out what's going on, and it's ended up being quite a major part. She features in about I think it must be about 40% of the book now.
You mentioned before that.
So how are your publishers?
By the way, don't tell my wife.
Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, no, I said, how are your publishers with your different ideas? Because I know we spoke to quite a few writers where they're like, no, we want this next book. We don't want you to do a standalone for a different idea. We want the next Ash Carter or something like that. How have you found it?
I found it that I'm looking for a new publisher, quite frankly, and that's why I've thought, okay, the Singapore books, I love them, but they've not been. I'm not looking to be a lead child. It'd be nice, but what drives me is enough people reading it to and giving me feedback to say they enjoyed it, and I just don't think it's getting the coverage that I expected. So, and I'm determined that this next one will get a different agent and a different publisher, because initially it's standalone, but then could spin out into this other, this detective series.
I was going to mention before, sorry, I interrupted Chris there. you mentioned before that you sort of worked, I guess, loosely on comedy, and if you were to get to the end, if you were to get to the end of, say, this series, and you were sat there thinking, okay, I want to write something different, would you consider a different genre?
I think the only thing I would consider would be science fiction again.
Okay.
But that's so hard. When I write, what I was determined to do was be unique. And I like, so Singapore 52, it was great because I couldn't find anything else based in Singapore in the 1950s. The I Dare You didn't feel unique. It felt like something Harlan Coben perhaps could have written. And I think it's good personally. That's not too arrogant. But I want to write something unique. And the problem with science fiction is there's so much science fiction. It's hard to come up with something that's good. It's hard to get Minority Report, for example, brilliant story. Because it was so different. Something like Vanilla Sky. I don't want to keep picking Tom Cruise. the Jack Reacher connection. That's the biggest joke ever. So I would like it to be science fiction, but it would have to be something totally different. It's like The Martian. What an amazing film. I should read the book really, but just having the time. But what an incredible story, and so different. And that's what I liked about, sorry to play your book, Chris, but your book on, death, it was unique as far as I was concerned. Okay, it had stylings of other people. That's I think it's pretty hard not to do that. But having a story that's so different and that can capture the imagination, that's what I want to do. So it's unlikely. I've got too many other thrillers I want to write, but at some point I may decide, you know what, I can't be unique anymore. These are too run of the mill. It's not about commercialism. Just because Netflix want me to produce another one, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to write something totally random.
If you could choose one film, say Netflix approached you, one of your books to become a production, which one would you choose of yours?
It's very difficult to choose. It would be either I Dare You, because I think it would make such a good Netflix film because of Harlan Coben's all being on Netflix. But Singapore 52 has such is so close to my heart. Because of my father. And I don't want to get too emotional, but he is about to die, and I was desperate to write the 6 based in Singapore before he died, and in fact he's managed to keep on going, which is amazing. So maybe he'll even get to read the prequel now. But it's probably days away. But that's the book that has the most meaning for me. And also I think when I think of Singapore 52, I think about walking the streets with him and the time just the two of us spent together and connecting after what it's like with parents. Sometimes you fall out, and my father and I didn't have the best of relationships for a period of time, and then we got back together, and then I did that, and we got really, really close. So it's been an honor to know him, and it would be very satisfying to have that produced as a TV show.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something that obviously that you've done and that will live on. Do you know what I mean? And that story that you've got there is something that will last forever. So that's kind of nice that you have done that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, Netflix, I guess, they do take on a lot of stories. And like you said, the hard thing about writing these days is originality and uniqueness. And again, touching on the science fiction, there was someone I was talking to the other day, and I had a story that I was kind of going over, and I thought this would be kind of nice. And he was like, "Oh, that sounds like that film." And I said, "Yeah, but it's different because of this." He said, "Yeah, but that sounds like that." And I was like, "Oh, come on, everything."
Well, I've got a story about that because I've actually got a friend who has a daughter who works for a producer in the States. And I was asked to submit the book I thought would make a good film. And foolishly, I sent my Egyptian one, Map of the Dead, because it had been a bestseller at the time, and I bigged it up, and I likened it to a Wilbur Smith and a Dan Brown, and I got a rejection straight away saying, "No, we want something unique." Well, read it. It's unique. I just wanted to, that turns them off straight away. You know,
Yeah.
And when you sell books, it's all about telling the reader this is like another book. But in the film industry, producers don't want that. They want the unique.
So we have a lot of listeners that are kind of new in the game of writing. And if you had any advice for someone who wants to write something, I guess, a bit more unique, do you have any tips that they could possibly look at?
Gosh,
it's a tough one. It's a tough one to answer. Yeah.
I think be unique. I think the best advice I ever got, and again, unfortunately, it was from my father. By the way, he should have been a writer because he used to tell me stories as a kid, and obviously he told me the Singapore stories. But he used to make up these fantastic stories that were very much like Enid Blyton, and he never wrote anything down. But he gave me advice once when I first started writing my nonsense, and he said, "You've got to live it. So it's got to come from the heart, and you've got to believe it. So you can't create something I think it'd be very hard to create anything that other people necessarily think is any good." Unless it really comes from you, and therefore, for me to give advice on somebody else about how you are unique, well, you just have to dig into yourself and find that uniqueness. And for me, it was connecting with my father and realizing, I don't want to write these Enid Blyton type stories. I could do. In fact, I remember some of them. But it was the Singapore history and the Egyptian stuff, by the way, comes from one of my hobbies is Egyptology, and I never studied it formally. I did a little bit on hieroglyphics, but yeah, it was very much that was me. That was something I could write about. So don't go trying to create something. Don't think, well, it'd be great to write a story about the SAS and know nothing about it. And Although I've got a good friend that is special forces, so that helps me on that. And I'm with him. We're brewing a new character.
Oh, nice.
Because he suffers from PTSD, and again, it's finding how it's through that contact, finding how I can make it's not unique. There's been programs and characters with PTSD, but by me finding out about him and the real detail, the nitty gritty, will enable me to create a character that will be hopefully unique, and then then it's a matter of coming up with a plot that feels unique. And if I can't, I won't write it.
Absolutely.
So, Murray, one of my favourite questions that we've been asking off of this season is, do you have any weird stories about the fans that you've met whilst doing like book signings and stuff? Because we've had some crackers.
I had the fan that fainted. She hadn't realised that I was standing behind her.
No.
And then somebody pointed me out, and I've got a photograph on Facebook of her grinning afterwards. But she just collapsed. I was really worried. But yeah, it's just lovely just to have somebody come up to you. I was taking my kid to school, and this guy came across the field. He was working in the playing field at the school, and shook my hand, and he said, "I'm your biggest fan." Well, who the hell are you? I'm taking my kid to school. I'm just a normal parent, but yeah, it's weird that I don't think of myself as a writer. I mean, I must say, I've got this other professional career that I dabble in. Quite frankly, it's been fairly quiet of late, and I guess I usually describe myself as semi-retired. And really, when I talk to my wife about why we need childcare, it's because I'm a writer. But I tend not really to think of myself as a writer. It's don't tell her again. It's a hobby, and but yeah. So sorry, Chris. I haven't got any amazing stories apart from the fainting fan.
That's pretty impressive.
I mean, yeah, making someone faint just from your writing alone, and then seeing you in person is pretty impressive.
Yeah. I'd be happy with that.
It sort of made me feel good after I realised she was okay.
Yeah, it's like yes, and she's on the floor. What are you celebrating for? Amazing. So Singapore Box that's your latest book?
No, Singapore Killer's the latest one.
Oh well,
no.
I think your website is out of date.
Oh, probably.
Because Singapore Boxer is highlighted with a big shiny star that says new next to it.
Oh, is it? No.
So I do apologise for being misinformed.
No, I know that website. Yeah, that website. Even the Singapore Fire it's got my favourite cover, and it's not on there yet. It's on Amazon. The new cover's on Amazon, but
okay.
It's just got a temporary cover on my website, and it's because I created that website, and unfortunately, I'm very lazy at updating it.
Well, I've had a look through the covers on there, and I do like to do this with a guest that comes on and tend to ask them their favourite cover. And last time I selected one, it was actually the same that the author selected as their favourite. So I'll pick one now that I've seen. Obviously, the latest one that you said is not on. The updated one is not on there.
Yeah,
but which would be your?
Fire's not there. Singapore Killer is. So I can't remember how many. There's 12 covers on there.
Yeah.
But say Singapore Fire is a dummy cover.
Okay.
It's so hard. It depends whether you like Egyptian stuff. You might have gone for Secrets of the Dead, but I will go for Singapore Killer.
Killer.
I don't remember. Is that the final cover? Is that got a single man on the cover with a knife?
It's not on the website, so I can't tell you.
Isn't it? Oh no.
No, it's not.
In that case, I'll go for Secrets of the Dead.
Secrets of the Dead. Let me just find this.
Right.
Scrolling.
It's not going to be that then.
Nope, it's not on there.
You're on the right website.
Map of the Dead is on. Yeah, this is the one from your.
Coben.
This is the one from your Twitter. Well, I'll tell you the two that I can see, and I've picked two because, to be honest, I like this.
Do you want to go to murraybaileybooks.com?
Yeah, that's what I'm on.
Okay. There should be a column of two. So 2 columns.
Okay. I'm on the first page, the homepage. I found them now. Okay. Yeah, I do like those. So the one I picked out that I like is Singapore Girl. I think it looks really good.
Okay, yeah.
That's a nice cover, and Dare You Twice as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
That's slightly different, but it's and
very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, a different artist.
Yeah, but they're all very, very.
Well, I'm glad you chose Singapore Girl, because the artist actually gave me credits on the back, because he came up with his first design, and I said, no, try this, and I wanted the girl in the R running away, and I sent him I can't remember, a photo disc image, and said, for example, use this, and he did. He used exactly that, and he changed some of the design based on what I said, and therefore gave me credits, which was very nice.
It's very nice.
I think that's been, a lot of
the Singapore
frustrating that they have little input in the cover design. But I've enjoyed. It's funny you picked Dare You Twice. I didn't particularly like that cover because you find a similar books have a girl in a red coat or something running away, and it seemed a little bit hackneyed.
I knew as soon as you said then, like, oh really? Because I knew, because you said about your uniqueness. That you wouldn't like that so much because it would be similar to others. Yeah, but it did. It did.
But they sell well, apparently. Yeah. They know that the people look for the covers with a girl running away, and So
I should have done that, Chris. I should have had her running away rather than just being creepy on the cover.
Yeah. Like it.
So is Singapore Killer there on the website?
Yes, it was on the. It was on the homepage, not under the books.
That wasn't your first choice. Damn.
No, I kind of like the more dark and the misty and the more. I like kind of creepy and dark, so that's
okay. Well, you'd enjoy Black Creek White Lies then, because so that's got a girl that disappears right at the start of the book, and it's about a girl that had disappeared, and then it's quite a twisty, turny tale based in Cornwall.
Oh, nice.
So that's a very. I really enjoyed writing that. It was a good mystery, and my family come from Cornwall, so I based it in that area.
Whereabouts in Cornwall? I spent a lot of time down there.
Halfway between Truro and Falmouth.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have a look at that.
Brilliant. So Murray, was there a point as a writer? I know you said you don't see yourself as a writer a lot of the time, but was there like a bit of a wow moment where maybe you went into a shop and saw your book on the shelf, or maybe you saw somebody reading it or something like that?
Oh, seeing somebody read it on the tube, that was... so there are 2 wow moments. One was seeing someone reading on the tube, And I really regret not going up and saying, that's my book. You know? And the second one was going into a business and doing my proper day job and being approached with somebody holding my book, asking me to sign it. And they'd obviously connected me, you know, my professional persona to my writing one, and said, you know, yeah, please could you sign this? Well, they did say, please can you sign this for my mum, which was
brilliant. Okay. Love it. So you mentioned your website that people can find your information on, and we're going to have to wrap up soon because we tend to stick under an hour. Is there anywhere else that people can go and find your work, or is this somewhere specific they should go other than the website, or is that where they should be going to find it?
I think murraybaileybooks.com is the place. I say I'll update it. I'm sorry about that.
It was just not under the books tab. It was in the home tab, but not the books tab.
Okay. But even that, you know, it's not got Singapore Fire on there, and I think I would, you know, maybe you'd have chosen that one as your best one.
Oh, okay.
It's got a picture of a junk on the front, you know, a Chinese junk with the red sail, and I'll do it very soon. I'll do it.
Tweet us with that cover, and we'll share it.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that. So yeah, I think that's probably the best place to see my books. You know, obviously there's Twitter and Facebook, but I tend not to be quite as active as thanks for putting that, because I can't remember it. I tend not to be very good at marketing. You know, it's funny enough, my wife is chief marketing officer, and she dies whenever I do. I just need her to do it for me, but she's too busy.
Yeah.
So yes, you know, you can always contact me through the website as well. I'm very happy to or through Twitter to correspond with people. You never know, you might even get a freebie. Quite happy to send stuff out.
Well, what we normally do, or have done in the past, is do a giveaway for the show. So if you were happy to give away a book for the show, would you require any sort of entry requirements? Because people have had weird things like send in pictures of nothing weird, just like silly faces and stuff like that. Would you be happy to do that? And if so, what would you want them to do?
I would like, let's say send in a description of your favorite character in a book.
Okay.
You know, it can, just a few words, because that's always interesting to see how people perceive other characters. And yeah, so I'll give you a signed copy of Singapore Killer. Are we saying it's a prize draw? So they'll be planned to be one, but I may give more.
Okay, excellent. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Sounds brilliant. And obviously, we've talked about where we can find your books, but what should we be looking out for in the future? Obviously, you mentioned Singapore Fire, but is there anything else that's coming on the immediate radar that we should be looking out for?
Well, I can tell you this very minute, if you go on to Amazon, Singapore Ghost, which is the one before Singapore Killer, is currently free. I think it's just free for another 2 days.
Okay.
Obviously, that's the Kindle version. And in fact, if you tell me the last word in chapter 45, I'll consider you, put you in a prize draw to be a character in a future book.
Ooh.
Like that. So that's the last word on chapter 45.
Chapter 45. There was one person kept sending me the last one on page 45, and then would find a different version somewhere else, and then no, it's chapter.
Yeah. Get it right.
And if you don't have Kindle, by the way, what I said to them was, you can obviously download it on the cloud reader from Amazon, and then if you tell me that word, then I'll send you a free version as an EPUB or a PDF, whatever you require.
Have you got that on a tweet somewhere? The competition.
Yeah, there was a tweet.
I'll see if I can find it and share it for you, and we'll try and get some of our guys to enter that.
Okay, brilliant. So I forgot what the question was now. What was the question, Chris?
No, just things that we should look out for.
So Singapore Fire is out early next year. The standalone, fingers crossed, I'm going to get a really good publisher. I'll tell you the name. I've been keeping it a secret, and it may get changed, but it's called All the Clues Were There.
Okay.
You know, so as you'd expect, it's actually a treasure hunt. And in my Map of the Dead, my first Egyptian book was based on a treasure hunt. And I learned a lot about the treasure hunting community. So I've got a group of treasure hunters trying to solve this treasure hunt. And surprise, surprise, they're getting killed off one at a time with my detective trying to work out what's going on. So watch out for that. I'm hoping that's going to be big. Say Cyprus story, which is probably called Cyprus 6, will... You never know, it might be next year, but it's more likely to be 2022. Just look at my website. I mean, there's always stuff coming. It's not coming quite as fast as it used to because I wrote a lot before I got published, and then rewrote stuff. So I had quite a lot of in the back book to work on.
Excellent.
Brilliant.
Well, I keep wanting to say... I keep trying to mix your name up, and I don't know what it is.
Even worse, I often get called Mr. Murray, and when I was a kid, people thought my name was Murray because my cousins were all called. The surname was Murray. My mother's surname is Murray, so she called me Murray.
Wow!
What a punishment! I
love that. Wow. Though. Like she wanted to carry on. That's quite nice.
Yeah, brilliant. What I was going to say, I'll say it again this time properly. Murray, thank you so much for coming on the show. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I've had a lot of fun. So thank you for coming on and sharing your stories with us.
Great, really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Yeah, Murray, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.